Alright, so one of the things I wanted to talk about this particular fit, I had a lot of trouble finding something that the Gallente Assault was really good at, and I started thinking about what makes Gallente really good in EVE Online, and one of the things was that they're very good with profiles, and very good with that type of E-War. Now, the thing is that profile is a little different in Dust 514 than it is in EVE Online, so I had to kind of think of creatively. The first two things that I wanted to do, actually the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to give it a full tactical assault rifle because of the general role that is being played. A Black Ops role, I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more stealthy than just hammering on a full automatic weapon, and the tactical assault rifle was just the one for that. Although I do have the Boundless Breach submachine gun as a sidearm, just in case it doesn't work. The flux grenade wound up being a decision as a method of taking out equipment sufficiently, as opposed to what I normally use, which is a core locust grenade. I use the core locust grenades to take out hard targets that I find difficulty with shooting, such as scouts. For some reason I just can't hit them sometimes. Now, the next thing I put on was 2 complex reactive plates. This gives me a little bit more buffer while also increasing my armor repair rate. So I have a good armor repair rate at 10.5 and a good armor rate at 475-ish. Now the thing is, whenever running assault, I kind of like to keep it at around 700 EHP, and because I have 194 shields, that balanced out really well in my favor. The cloaking device was actually the first thing I put on because of the role that is being played. I wanted a low-profile assault that also had the advantage of a cloaking device, sort of like a harder to kill scout, but in the same sense has a lot of firepower behind it, and the fitting bonus from the assault actually allowed me to do that. One thing I did add was the complex profile dampeners, which obviously give me a lower profile, bringing it down to 24. That puts me beneath the precision of most other assaults. While it's a little bit harder to get past some Gallente Logis and some scouts, it definitely helps out with the targets that I'm intending to fight against. I also put a complex cardiac regulator. The reason for this is because the Gallente don't have a lot of stamina, and I like to be able to move around and have a lot of mobility, and a kinetic catalyzer while increasing the sprint speed does help. I find it better to outrun my targets as far as endurance than it is to outrun them by speed. And the reason for that is because you can have a lot of speed, but if the stamina is too low, all the speed in the world isn't going to matter, and this way I can actually outrun most targets before they can even get to where they're going. The complex precision enhancer was more of an afterthought. I needed something to fill the 2 high slots without going overboard, and as you can see from the fit being 499 CPU out of 499, it is a very tight fit, and thusly the complex precision enhancer actually was just more of utility that I could fit on there as opposed to anything else. I also added a complex light damage modifier to bring up the damage of my tactical assault rifle. Now let's move on to the actual gameplay and how this works. So I'm fast forwarding through this bit, mostly because it's the start of the match. There's nothing really important going on, but it also allows me to get to the premise that I'm trying to make with the cloaking device. You don't want to use the cloaking device primarily for combat, mostly because it's very difficult to use in combat due to delays and animations. I mainly use it for open point A to point B use, diving in and out of cover, which as you can see right there, I almost ran out just getting behind the building because it's a standard cloak. Now, I like to wait for it to recharge before moving again, and at this point I was heading for Charlie, but I realized that they were already hacking Alpha and decided to divert. I encountered the first enemy, which was a GalAssault Assault, which is right about here. Sorry, it was a Minotaur. It's a militia guy, didn't really know what he was doing, ran right past me and put him down quickly. Now I was taking fire before that from a different angle, so I used the cloak to fall back. Keeping a good eye out for hostiles. I noticed this guy up on the catwalk, but immediately a threat presents itself, to which he couldn't aim very well, probably another new player. This guy right here was using an advanced suit with a rail rifle, and I was already at a disadvantage because he had the range, so I decided to use the cloaking device and get a better angle on him. As stated previously, the Black Ops doesn't have that much EHP, and as a result you have to kind of think of it more of a support role and be more tactical minded. In this case, I'm using the precision enhancer and the range of my scans to see that there's a drop-up link, and remove that first to kill their reinforcements. Hold on to flux since they're using shields, and knock out both of them for a quick kill on the first. And the second takes a little bit longer, but I still get him. Taking a moment to fall back and reload. I use the cloaking device to try to survey the area and immediately find a Proto logi. I'm sorry, advanced logi. Now, the heavy, I never try to engage a heavy in open combat. You will never win. So it was best just to run, using the cloaking device as a stopgap. Here I use a map glitch to my advantage. You can see through the walls there. The other person cannot, and it's only specific to that side. You'll see here that I can see through the walls, and then when I round the corner, you're unable to. Using that to my advantage, I come up and spring up on the next guy, get a kill assist, which is fine. Taking a moment to reload, I move back to Alpha, and decide to get some extra points by nullifying the equipment. This is a brand new player using a sniper starter fit. Didn't really know how to handle the situation, and I managed to get the jump on him because he was too reliant on his scans. Surveying the situation at Alpha, I started to notice that there was very light defenses, and while normally this kind of fit I wouldn't use to jump head into combat, I decided to take my chances, and immediately upon jumping down I came across this guy. But also he had a buddy spawn in, so I had to think a little bit more tactically. Take a moment for my cloaking to recharge while nullifying a threat. Jumping off the railing, I needed to deal with the drop-up link to prevent reinforcements from spawning in, and then decided to help this guy out, but noticed that there was a tank and he was using a rail rifle, which, me being using armor, puts me at a disadvantage. I use the cloaking device to shimmy behind him and get a flanking maneuver, while also evading the tank using my low profile. I don't quite manage to kill him, but I throw a flux grenade just to keep his shields down just in case. Here I decided to take a long route using the cloaking device, not wanting to risk getting seen by the tank, which could just as easily have been a sentinel with an HMG ready to jump out. While my cloak recharges, I come in from the 6, noticing that the tank is still paying attention to Alpha, and go for long-range suppression to knock down his shields a bit more before I make the final assault and push forward, taking him out. Using the cloaking device again to evade the tank and trying to get back on track as to what I was doing, trying to stay away from open areas and stay close to cover and concealment. Surveying the area at Charlie, I decided to use the cloaking device to make a press forward, stopping behind the rock to let my cloaking recharge. You always want to keep your gun up while you're waiting for this to recharge, because it's really bad to get caught with your hands out, using the cloaking device again, suspecting that they're going to be heavy resistance. This guy's distracted, so I use my cloaking device in low profile to get a flank on him, and then cloak back up and try to survey the situation and figure out what I'm going to do. And here is where this pays off, because as you can see there's a heavy and 2 infantry. They don't notice me, so I back off. Using the environment to the advantage, I accidentally came across a drop-up link, which I would not have found if I hadn't had the precision enhancer, I reckon. A drop-up link on the 2nd floor that I wanted to take care of first, then using the cloaking device to jump the railing and go back to supporting my team. In this case, there's a forge gunner that was attacking the ADS. He was top priority, but after noticing that he had rounded the corner, I needed to deal with the immediate threat, which was the guy shooting at me. Cloaking back up, I take a moment to go and let my armor and shields recharge. So now noticing that there's a couple of infantry here, I wanted to try to take out the guys on the outskirts, but noticing over here that there was a heavy, I immediately changed my mind because I don't have enough EHP to deal with him or firepower. Rounding back, I noticed that there's this loner with a 2nd on the 2nd floor. I decided to take my chances with the loner on the bottom. He hasn't noticed me yet, and I use that to my advantage and get a kill. Taking note that I'm not directly assaulting the area, I still managed to get another kill, even though he's a new player. Not wanting to directly engage the hostiles, I am the only one out at Charlie. Noticing the heavy with the HMG again, I decided to back off and take another route. And initially I had wanted to focus the Gallente Assault, but noticed that the LAV driver had spotted me and decided to use my cloaking device to bail out once more. Thinking that I'm in over my head at this point because there's so many of them, I wanted to survey the area just a little bit longer and try to figure out if there was another easy target, which wound up being this guy. I shoot it early because the LAV's in the way and don't manage to get the kill. And moving back up, he's spotted me. Now, because he spotted me, he has the initiative. I decided to use my cloaking device and superior scanning abilities to get a nice flank on him. Taking cover as to not be noticed by the hostile LAV, I decided to round the corner and noticed that there's a lot more enemies. In this particular case, there's an Amar scout with a shotgun. I wanted to see if I could take him out, but then I noticed that somebody had gotten into the LAV and was moving up. Having taken fire, I needed to bail out of the area, and then noticed that there's this gentleman on the 2nd floor who had noticed me and was taking pot shots. I decided to take a longer route away as I was taking damage, and he had the initiative as well as a range and height advantage.
Hostile MCC shields failed.
And it was around this point that I realized I started to get a little low on ammo and decided to fall back completely and just leave Charlie alone. It was just too much of a risk to worth a couple of kills. Now here there's an LAV that I wanted to take out, but I had to figure out where he was going and decided to wait with my cloak ready in case he decided to round the corner. I didn't want to be seen. He wound up taking off, however. Decided to follow and see where he was going because there was a blue dot nearby that he was trying to run over. Using my cloaking device to get more of a range advantage. I noticed this guy who's already removed as a threat. The LAV is still in tow. I found that it's generally best to walk toward LAVs whenever they're coming after you, because it's a lot harder for them to turn to hit you when you're moving toward them than it is when you're moving away from them. Noticing that I'm severely low on ammo, trying to find a supply depot at this point, as I'm not really familiar with this map. And then I noticed that there's a nano hive, which does help, as it gives me one magazine. However, it's a compact nano hive and has very, very little nanites, so I only wind up getting one clip out of the deal. Taking a moment to reload, I survey the situation at Charlie once more, and there's a lot of infantry, but I decided to give it a go anyway, moving up on this left side. However, I have a lot of allies that are moving up on the same direction as me, which puts me at a disadvantage because even if they don't see me, they will see my allies, and eventually I will have to decloak, and they will see me. Cooking a flux grenade, decided to toss it in and maybe help an ally, but I know there's an HMG above, so I decided to keep a low profile, even at the expense of letting him die. I managed to get a kill assist off the forge gun heavy, but I noticed that there's still 3 more and 2 more on the far end. I cloak up and get out because I know that there's no way that I can win this battle, especially with such a low EHP. Flux grenade was to ensure that there wasn't a drop-up link and kill any reinforcements. Then I move up and take a couple of pot shots to help my allies in the hopes that they'll go after Charlie and take it, as we've lost Bravo. Here, I use the tactical to reduce his shields and then dive in and out of cover to let him overheat his HMG, and once he's done so, he had to switch to his sidearm. It's really hard to get a heavy to overheat his weapon, and in the eventuality that he does, he's probably very inexperienced, as most heavies will never let their gun overheat. In that case, he didn't. He did good, but I still had the advantage in just sheer damage potential, using prototype weaponry versus his Apex.
Objective C hacked.
At this point, I realized that Charlie is being taken, and we have a strong advantage there. I decided to go check out on Alpha. Having the 2 null cannons versus their 1 allowed us to keep the lead. However, I didn't want to lose Alpha in the process while the rest of our team had the tunnel vision on Charlie. A big part of playing a role like this is you have to be able to think ahead of time, playing chess while they're still playing checkers and getting caught up in the momentum of a single objective. You need to think outside the box, because you may be the only line of defense when there's no one at the objective. However, I decided to go over to Bravo, and this wound up being a critical mistake, as it looked clear when I initially started my run. Cloaked up, moved forward, and at this point I realized that there was a lot more enemies popping up than I realized because it was their only spawn. I managed to take this guy out, but I didn't have any chance against the rail rifle at that range. Spawning back in, I wanted to take put a bit more distance between me and them as possible, using the cloaking device immediately after spawning to survey the situation, and I noticed that they had taken the large blaster. There's a way that you can know if a player is in it, and in this particular case the turret was pointing in an odd fashion. It was pointing toward our base when it should be pointing away from it, and noticed that it wasn't moving at all, instead firing at an ADS, and decided to go investigate, which wound up proving fruitful, as there was this guy who was a new player but died nonetheless. I decided to hack the turret to give the ADS a little bit of a break since he had just taken a lot of damage. Noticed that there was a railgun tank that had moved up and was trying to get points on the turret before I hacked it, and then noticed that he was swinging around toward the supply depot. Now the ADS at this point was hovering near the supply depot. It looked maybe like he needed ammo, and despite our railgun tank trying to get easy points off of it, we decided to hack it and allow the ADS to get ammo. That's one thing that I wish a lot of players would reconsider, instead of just going for the easy points, is the effect that it has on the team, as this railgun tank actually winds up going immediately for the clone reserve unit, trying to get more easy points, not realizing that this could be the only thing that keeps us from losing Bravo in the future. Coming in, I noticed that there's a player, put him down, helped my teammates out, and then decided to hack the clone reserve unit, as we had the support of the tank and another infantry, as well as a few drop-up links. Just as I had suspected earlier, we had lost Alpha, but in return we had gotten Bravo, and decided to cloak up and head back to Alpha. Drop-up links always take a higher priority than most players. If the player is shooting at me, I try to keep that in mind, but drop-up links will always take a higher priority because it prevents reinforcements. I can handle one, but I can't handle three. In this case, I noticed that a player had jumped prematurely, which is what I was trying to prevent with my cloaking device. I was trying to survey the situation. He did not, and wound up dying as a consequence, despite my attempts to help him. Using the height advantage, I managed to take out two of them, noticing that there was a third. Investigate, he's unable to be incapacitated, so now I focus on the drop-up link, noticing that there's another player that spawned in. Removing the drop-up link, there's one threat left, which I do a good job of removing. Jumping down, I noticed that there's this player who I had no idea what he was doing. Perhaps he was trying to mess with his fittings. Here, I know for a fact that if you aim well enough, you can shoot through the catwalk, and I try to use this to my advantage, as a lot of players won't take advantage of this. Jumping down, I use the cloaking device to get a flanking maneuver on this player. Though I have a little bit of difficulty hitting him, I wound up killing him anyway. Now, noticing that it's a heavy, I don't want to engage this and decide to back off, even at the expense of my ally, who is taking the brunt of his damage. Swinging around, I decided to try to get a flank on him. I was unsuccessful. They managed to kill him beforehand, but I wanted to take out the clone just in case there was someone with an anti-injector. This scout was lucky. Unlucky rather, as he had engaged while there was multiple allies. Using flanking maneuvers, I take out two more. Initially, I thought there was another spawn in on the other side and decided to investigate, being rather cautious as to not know what was around the corner, but continued on my way. Now here I noticed that they have no spawns left, and we have a very good advantage, wanting to get a couple of extra kills before the match was over. Now that we had a sealed deal, I used the cloaking device to move forward. This heavy didn't notice that I was coming, and I decided to use that to my advantage and flank, and killed him before he could ever get a shot off on me. Now here I noticed that there was a couple of players coming down, dealing with the close range first, as they had the higher advantage. I realized later on that that second guy had a swarm launcher. Removing the mass driver as a threat takes a lot of suppression off my teammates. Here I wanted to get a jump on him. Even though he was distracted with the ADS, I didn't know what else was going to be around the corner, and it wound up being a forge gun heavy, and then didn't manage to get the kill before the match ended. This match was actually really well done, considering that this was the first match that I played with this fit, and as a result, having only died once, I had a very high KDR. With a very high amount of SP from this match, I decided to drop the ARM and get a bonus, as I don't really play that often, and I like being able to have a lot of SP without having to cap out every week. I wound up going 28-1 with 0 headshots, which wasn't nearly as bad as how much it actually helped the team. The amount of damage dealt and the damage received was exponential, and wound up going in second place despite being not in a squad and by myself.